The woman who married a poor mountain man in the spring of 1885, when the plains still whispered with wind, and the mountains guarded their secrets like old men who had seen too much. Clara Whitmore stepped off the dusty stagecoach with nothing but a small brown suitcase and a decision that had already shocked half the town of Willow Creek. She was not poor by birth, nor desperate by circumstance. Clara had been raised with piano lessons, lace curtains, and expectations that her life would be lived beside a polished man with a respectable name. Yet here she was, her boots sinking into the dry earth, eyes fixed on the lone figure waiting near the wooden bench, Elias Boone, the man everyone called that poor mountain fellow. Elias did not look like the men who had courted her before. His clothes were simple, worn but clean, his boots scuffed from years of walking rocky trails. A dark vest, lined with rough fur, hung over his shoulders, and his hands, strong, scarred, honest, rested calmly on his knees as if he had nothing to prove to anyone. The townsfolk watched from porches and shop doors, whispering the same question: why would a woman like her marry a man like him? Clara felt their stares, felt the judgment pressing against her back, but she lifted her chin and walked toward Elias without hesitation. When he stood to greet her, his eyes softened in a way no polished gentleman's ever had. There was warmth there, and something deeper, something steady. He tipped his head slightly, not as a show, but as respect. "You ready?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "I am." No grand ceremony followed, no music, no silk banners, just a preacher, two witnesses, and vows spoken plainly but honestly. When the ring slid onto her finger, Clara felt a strange calm settle over her, as if she had stepped onto a path she was always meant to walk, no matter how narrow it seemed to others. By evening, they were seated on a small wooden wagon, Clara perched beside Elias as he took the reins. The horse moved slowly, pulling them away from Willow Creek and deeper toward the mountains rising in the distance. She looked back once, seeing the town shrink behind them, her old life dissolving into dust and memory. "You don't have much, do you?" she asked gently, not as an accusation but as an understanding. Elias smiled faintly. "Not much that can be counted," he replied, "but enough." The road grew rougher as daylight faded. Fields gave way to hills to winding paths where trees leaned close and shadows stretched long. Clara's hands tightened around her suitcase, and for the first time a flicker of uncertainty touched her heart. She had heard the rumors, how Elias lived alone, how he trapped and traded, how his cabin was barely fit for winter. Some said he married her for convenience, others said for charity. None of them knew the man beside her. None of them knew how he listened when she spoke, how he never interrupted, how his silence was not emptiness but thought. Night fell fully by the time they stopped to rest. Elias helped her down from the wagon and handed her a cup of warm tea brewed over a small fire. The stars above were brighter than any she had ever seen, scattered like promises across the sky. "You ever regret it?" she asked softly, staring into the flames. Elias did not answer right away. He looked at her then, really looked, as if weighing the truth carefully. "No," he said, "and I won't." They continued their journey at dawn. The mountain path narrowed, climbing higher, colder. Clara's breath fogged in the air, her fingers numb despite the shawl Elias had wrapped around her shoulders without being asked. She noticed things now, the way he chose paths that avoided loose rock, how birds seemed unafraid of him, how the forest felt less threatening in his presence. Hours passed, then more, until exhaustion pressed into her bones. She wondered where they were going, how much farther, and whether the rumors had been kinder than the truth. Then, Elias slowed the wagon and stopped. "We're here," he said. Clara looked around, confused. All she saw were trees, stone, and a sheer rock face rising before them. No cabin, no shelter, just wilderness. Her heart sank, and she swallowed her disappointment, forcing herself not to show it. "This is home?" she asked carefully. Elias stepped down and walked toward the rock wall, brushing aside thick vines and low branches. "Just wait," he said. Clara followed, her boots crunching on gravel. As Elias pushed aside the last curtain of green, her breath caught. Hidden within the mountain itself was a wide stone archway, almost invisible from a distance, opening into a path that curved inward. Sunlight spilled through from above, illuminating carved stone steps, ivy-covered columns, and the faint outline of tall windows set deep into the rock. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. Her heart thundered. This was no cabin. This was no poor man's dwelling. It was something else entirely, ancient, solid, deliberate. Elias turned to her, his expression unreadable. "I didn't lie to you," he said quietly. "I just didn't explain." Clara stepped forward, awe replacing every doubt she had carried. "What is this place?" she whispered. Elias hesitated, then answered, "It's my family's home, and it's been hidden for a long time." She looked at him then. Not the poor mountain man the town had mocked, but a man of depth, history and secrets carved into stone. And as she crossed the threshold beside him, Clara realized her marriage had not taken her into poverty at all, but into a mystery far greater than she had ever imagined. Clara stood frozen at the stone threshold, her heart pounding as if it were trying to warn her that life as she knew it had just ended and something far greater had begun. As Elias led her forward, the cool mountain air shifted into a gentle warmth, and the path opened into a vast hidden courtyard carved directly into the heart of the mountain. Sunlight poured down through a natural opening above, illuminating stone walls polished smooth by time, climbing vines and iron lanterns that flickered to life as if sensing their master's return. Clara's breath trembled as her eyes traveled across balconies, arched doorways, and tall glass windows that reflected the sky like mirrors. "This was built by my grandfather," Elias said quietly, his voice echoing softly against the stone. "A man who trusted mountains more than men." He explained how his family had once been wealthy traders, moving goods safely through dangerous territories, earning fortunes and enemies. When violence followed greed, his grandfather hid everything within the mountain, choosing secrecy over pride. Over time, Elias became the last keeper of the place, living simply so no one would suspect the truth. Clara listened, tears forming not from fear, but from understanding. All those whispers, all that judgment. None of them had known the weight Elias carried alone. Inside the mansion, rooms unfolded like chapters of a forgotten book. A grand hall with a stone fireplace taller than any house in Willow Creek, shelves filled with leather-bound journals, a piano covered in linen waiting patiently for hands like hers. Clara pressed her fingers to the keys, letting a soft note echo through the hall, and for the first time since her mother's death, music returned to her chest like breath. Days passed within the mountain walls, and Clara learned that wealth was not what made the place extraordinary. It was care. Elias repaired walls himself, cooked meals with quiet devotion, and listened when Clara spoke of her past without ever making her feel small. Yet the world beyond the mountain refused to forget them. One evening, smoke rose from the valley below, and Elias knew trouble had finally found them. A group of men from Willow Creek, led by a greedy landbroker who had once tried to buy Elias's land for nothing, had followed rumors into the hills. They came armed with lies and guns, believing the mountain man had stolen treasure he did not deserve. Clara's fear returned, sharp and real, but Elias stood calm, guiding her into the mansion's inner chambers. "This place was built to protect," he said, his eyes steady. When the men arrived, they found no poor trapper waiting, but a man who knew every echo, every passage, every hidden door. Elias confronted them at the outer arch, his voice firm, his presence unshaken. He spoke the truth, not with threats, but with proof, deeds, records, and the quiet confidence of a man who had nothing to hide. The broker's greed collapsed under daylight, and when the sheriff arrived, summoned by signals Elias had arranged long ago, the truth ended the threat without bloodshed. As the men were taken away, Clara stepped beside her husband, realizing she had not married a poor man nor a rich one, but a strong one, strong enough to choose humility, strong enough to protect without cruelty. In the weeks that followed, Elias made a decision that surprised even himself. The mansion would no longer be a secret born of fear. He opened parts of the land to travelers, traders, and families seeking safety, turning the hidden refuge into a place of quiet hope. Clara became its heart, teaching music to children who had never seen a piano, planting gardens that bloomed against stone, and proving that love could soften even mountains. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the valley gold, Elias took Clara's hand on the balcony overlooking the plains. "You could have had an easier life," he said. She smiled, leaning into him. "I chose a true one. Below them, the world stretched wide and honest, and above them, the mountain stood not as a wall, but as a shelter built by trust." The story spread, not as gossip, but as legend, a reminder that wealth hidden in stone means nothing without a heart brave enough to share it. And so, in 1885, a woman who married a poor mountain man found herself richer than she ever dreamed, not because of a mansion, but because she was loved, protected, and seen. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.